Hi. Happy Mother's Day. Yeah, three of you. I was just talking to the three of you, so I'm glad that the rest of you didn't think I was talking to you. Last week, I wasn't able to be here because we were, part of our staff was at a conference that was very helpful for us in another state. And so last week, our tech team actually figured out a way to make it kind of look like I was here by putting me on this screen behind me. And a number of you have come up to me today in the lobby to tell me how cool you think that was. And so shout out to our tech team, one. Number two, I don't know why I even bother showing up anymore. Why not just do that every week? And that'd be amazing. So it's Mother's Day, and they give me a microphone around here, so I get to do this. This is my wife, Emily, and I just want to say, Emily, happy Mother's Day to you. I love you very much. You know, you marry someone because they're smart and they're funny and they're attractive, and you don't even think about what kind of mom they might become. And then you start to have kids, and you start to realize, oh my gosh, I just basically hit the jackpot. Like, is there anything she can't do? She's just an amazing mother. And hopefully you have one of those, or you are one of those, or you're married to one of those as well. And I just, here's what I've discovered about my wife, and maybe this will feel true to some of you as well. She does so much and is so great to our kids and trains them so well and is so great to me, and yet never feels like it's quite enough. Always has some residual feelings of guilt that I should be doing more. How many of us feel that? And so almost every mom, almost every dad I talk to have some of that, no matter how good they are. It's Mother's Day, and I want to talk today a little bit about mothers. Now, you may not be a parent, you may not be a mom or a dad, and so if you'll just give me the grace today and on Father's Day as well to just talk about parenting and talk about moms and dads, I would really appreciate that. I realize that some of you have never parented before. Some of you have no desire to parent ever. Some of you parented at one point, and then your kids got old and they got out of the house, and you're like, phew, we are done. Don't even come back for Thanksgiving. This is exhausting. So we're all at different stages, but wherever you are, I think there's going to be enough in what we talk about today to be helpful to you, even if you are not a parent. So if you can kind of lean in and maybe make the direct applications to your own personal life, that would be great. I actually sent a text message to my mom and several women who I really just love and respect over the last several weeks, asking them about Mother's Day. So this is my mom. Mom, if you're watching online, happy Mother's Day to you as well. And I asked them, hey, you've gone to church on Mother's Day. What's been helpful at church on Mother's Day? What do you wish maybe you would have heard about that you haven't heard about on Mother's Day? What's been unhelpful on Mother's Day? So my mom, most people sent me back like a few sentences. My mom sent me back 7 paragraphs of stuff, right? Like, I literally could have just used it as an outline for this sermon and just been done. But this is what she said. I love this. She said, mothers are always honored on that day, but I think they also need to be challenged and reminded of the great calling God has put on them. And then she went on, and I'm her son, and she was just real honest, and she said, you might not feel comfortable as a man issuing that challenge, but you asked me what I thought wasn't being discussed on this day. This is it. Well, she's right. I'm not comfortable as a man delivering that challenge, because I've got a feeling that most of you didn't wake up today thinking like, you know what, let's go to church so a man can tell us how to be better moms. Like, that's probably not why you got up this morning, okay? So I'm going to do it anyway. Here we go. Actually, here's the thing. When someone, I get asked, over the years, I've been pastoring for almost 20 years now, and I get asked by people like, hey, I want to be better parents. How do we do that? My answer for years has been, my kids aren't grown and out of the house yet. So I'm like the worst person you could ask this question to. Like, we don't have the data back to know if we messed them up or not. Spoiler alert, we've definitely messed them up a little bit, okay? So we're working through this. What I wanted to share with you today is not how to be a parent because I did it great, and if you just do what I did, you'll have great kids. What I want to share with you today is some encouragement, some observations that others have helped teach my wife and I over the years. So this is not like, I didn't come up with this stuff. I didn't come up with anything today. All of this is stuff that someone handed us at some point, told us at some point, instructed us, or that we learned implicitly by watching what they did at some point. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Moms, we desperately need great, godly moms to stay in there, to hang in there, and to raise our kids. You are important, so we honor you today, but I also want to challenge you today. Dads, this is going to be just as applicable to you as well. And again, if you don't have kids, I think you'll find a lot here to be helpful, because whether you have kids or not, you're probably going to mentor someone, disciple someone, show someone how to live at some point in your life, and that's really what parenting is about. Just a spoiler alert as far as the Bible goes. There is not a passage I can point you to that will give you a 5-point plan for being an excellent parent. There's not a passage I can show you that if you just do these 17 things, then you'll be the greatest parents ever and your kids will turn out perfectly. In fact, we're not given a promise, even if you do a great job parenting, there's no promise that your kids will live a great life. Sometimes they turn from the way that you've shown them, even if you've shown them a good way. But what I want to talk about today, I want to start in a passage that may seem unlikely. I want to start in the book of Matthew in chapter number 28, and it's the Great Commission. And in it, Jesus says this. This is not normally a parenting passage, but I just want us to think about this for a second. Jesus says this to his disciples after he's raised from the dead. He's about to leave them, and he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. We talked about a few weeks ago when we were in a series called Rabbi Jesus about the fact that rabbis made disciples. And rabbis, the way that they would make these disciples is not just to give them information. They wouldn't just teach them, but they would have their disciples follow them everywhere they went. And they would have their disciples look at everything they did. And they would have their disciples emulate them. And so there was this saying that became very popular in the first, second, third centuries of Jewish history, which said, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. This idea that if you follow your rabbi so closely, you'll be so close behind them that everything they step in, all the dust, all the dirt in this desert region, it will be caked on the front of you because you are so closely following what they do. You will have no better opportunity to make a disciple, whether you want to or not, than you do with your kids. Why? Because your kids don't just listen to the things you teach them. They're not just tuning in when you hope that they are. Your kids are with you all the time, following you everywhere you go, listening to everything you say. And if that sounds like the plot of a horror movie, it's because it kind of is. They're everywhere. So what do we do with that? Well, again, my kids are still young, 9 and 6 years old. So I wouldn't presuppose to tell you everything to do, but I do have a few encouragements for you today. Encouragements. Number one, I've got 4 of them, and then we'll be done, okay? Encouragement number 1, get good at the 2 parts of parenting. Get good at the 2 parts of parenting. There are 2 parts to parenting. The first one is joy. There's a joy in parenting. In fact, think back to the reason that you had children, right? Was it so that they could help you work the farm? No, probably not. Was this because you needed some more manual labor around? Was it so that you could get a certain position within the kingdom? No, none of those things. At different times, right, those things have been true, but that's not why you had kids. For most of you, you had kids on purpose. A few of us didn't. A little bit of oops, happy accident, like a Bob Ross thing, right? A little bit of but for most of us, it was intentional, right? There was something happening inside of us and something happening between us, some kind of joy that was like spilling over. And here's what joy does. When you have joy just becomes more and more inclusive. You eat at that great taqueria and you're like, these tacos were amazing. You're inviting all your friends. Why? You enjoyed them. You just couldn't contain it. You couldn't keep it to yourself. Your love between you and someone else was so good. There was something that was so enjoyable between you that it couldn't be contained within just the 2 of you. It spilled over and like created entire people. So the very first part of parenting is joy. And there is an enjoyment to our kids. Right? Like there's a fun. I never expected, by the way, that my favorite part, it may be my favorite part of being a father, would be watching my kids enjoy something for the first time. Like their enjoyment is my enjoyment. We watched a few months ago, the movie E.T. for the very first time, right? And just seeing them, I loved that movie as a kid, and seeing them start making jokes about E.T. phone home and, Elliot. Like at the end, they're doing that. They're like, E.T. is, I don't want to ruin the ending, but things don't go well for him for a while. And so they were kind of tearing up and emotional when things weren't going well, which made me tear up and emotional when things weren't going well. It was an amazing experience. You should enjoy your kids. In fact, I would say, before raising your kids, your first job as a parent is to enjoy your kids. I had a friend of mine tell me that years and years ago, and it's been maybe one of the most helpful pieces of parenting advice I ever received, because your kids can feel when you enjoy them, and they can feel when you don't. And if they always just feel like an obligation to you, you are missing out on the joy of parenting. So that's the first part. But there's another part of parenting, and it's why enjoying them isn't always easy, right? There's the joy part of parenting, but there's also the pain in the neck part of parenting, okay? There's both of those things. So what do you do when that becomes true as well, right? We have 2 children, and one of them has always just been just joyful. And we have another child that sometimes struggles to be joyful. And what can happen is because kids are exhausting, right? When we first had children, I think that the idea we had in our minds, right? We'd seen a lot of photos of this in movies where someone has a baby and this sweet little infant is just in your arms and cooing and they're so quiet. And then we saw this video. They made us right at the hospital. We had to watch all these videos, like never shake a baby. Like we had to watch hours of videos about how you wouldn't shake a baby. And I just keep looking at Emily like, I think we know not to shake a baby. Why are they forcing us to watch all these videos about not shaking a baby? Then you get the baby home. And you're holding the baby, and it's going, and you no matter what you can do, and you're just thinking like, don't shake it, don't shake the baby. I shouldn't shake the baby. Oh, I want to shake the baby. Like it's just like stop, right? Your body almost can start to convulse because you so want them to be quiet, and they just won't. By the way, if you haven't had kids yet, they're really great. You should totally go for it. Don't worry about any of this stuff. It's great. So, but it is not the way that you think it's going to be from the very beginning. And then they get older and they start to develop personalities, and there are great things about that and scary things about that. There are things that you can see in them that you struggle with, right? But here's the thing. If you don't enjoy them, even when they are not particularly enjoyable, they will pick that up. They will pick that up. And how you think about being a parent deeply shapes how your kid sees the world. If you see parenting as a delight and an opportunity and a pleasure and a privilege, your kids will pick that up. And if you see parenting as an obligation, as something that you start to resent, they will pick that up as well. And when I've talked about, like, what if we had an audio recording of what we say to our kids every day and just back to back, like there was no space in between. You could just listen to all the things we say to our kids all day. And I think we would go something like this. Good morning. Did you sleep well last night? What would you like for breakfast? Quit it. Stop it. Don't hit each other anymore. Get it. Why are you doing that? Don't do that to the dog. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Good night. I love you. Like something like that, right? And so we have to be really cognizant that that's not the audio loop that we're stuck on. That we are enjoying our children, that we're taking time out to enjoy our children. A couple of ways to parent. First of all, there's this way. Why do you always do that? Right? Kid misbehaves. By the way, parents, the kid will misbehave. You're not the only one who has a misbehaving child, okay? Why do you always do that? Second way to parent. We don't do that. Okay, the difference here is slight, but it really, really matters. Why do you always do that is a shame-based question that you're asking. Like, there's something wrong with you. You keep doing that. Why do you keep doing that? It's like you're implying that there's something broken inside. And honestly, the only answer they're going to be able to give you is, I don't know. I don't know. We don't do that is about their identity. In this house, that's not how we roll, right? In my house, like we are Cranes. And because you're a Crane, like we value honesty, we value integrity, we value truth. And so that's how we treat each other. We want to build up trustworthiness. We don't want to lie to each other. That's who you are. And so Jack and so William in my household, right? Like that's who you are at your core. And the invitation then is for you to live into who you actually are. The one thing implies that there's something wrong with you. The other thing implies that this is not who you were created to be. You were created for so much more. You being a part of this family makes you so much more. And the more that you can remind your kids, affirm their goodness, encourage them in the things that you see, remind them of who they actually are instead of just constantly telling them to stop it. Why would you do that? I can't believe you. Like, you've got to affirm that there is a goodness inside of them that's aching to come out. It's two very different ways of parenting. Okay, get good at the two parts of parenting. Encouragement number 2. The healthier you are, the healthier your children are likely to be. The healthier you are, the healthier your children are likely to be. There was an article in The Atlantic this last month, and in the article, what they're trying to get at the root at is why are kids struggling with stress and anxiety so much today? You know, really, since we've been measuring these things in the United States, we have never seen kids and students struggling as much with anxiety and stress today as we have before. Now, easier answer might be, well, pandemic. It's been a couple of years of craziness. And that's true. That has certainly added to it. But the reality is that they've been charting up. Trajectory has been up for a long time. Way before the pandemic, anxiety and stress was through the roof. Now, everyone's trying to answer this question right now. Sociologists, psychologists, like the studies are being done. Best I can tell, right, and I'm not a psychologist or sociologist, there doesn't seem to be one silver bullet solution as to why it's happening like this. Social media seems to play some kind of effect. Lack of as many personal friends seems to have some kind of effect. But there's another thing that this author of the Atlantic article points to that we have some evidence of as well, and this is what they wrote. Anxious parents, in seeking to insulate their children from risk and danger, are unintentionally transferring their anxiety to their kids. Again, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons. And here's what we're finding. When parents have a lot of anxiety, anger, fear, their kids pick up on that, and you end up passing that along to them. You may have all kinds of good reasons for feeling anxious and fearful, by the way. Your social media feed, your news feed, any news station you pull up is going to be pumping all the horrible things that happen in the world all the time to you, 24 hours a day if you allow it. Now, crime over the last 30 years is at an almost all-time low. The murder rate has been up the last couple of years, which has added to violent crime. But for the most part, things are in pretty good shape in the United States where you happen to live. And yet, because we are constantly fed that, parents are treating their children in very different ways than they did 30 years ago. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it wasn't that uncommon for kids to be able to ride around, on their bicycles in their neighborhood, even at a fairly young age. We just don't do that anymore because we're scared of that. Kids are starting everything later. Their independence is later. They're getting their driver's license later. They're leaving home later. Like all these things have been pushed back, and they're feeling increasingly anxious. And part of that is our own anxiety and fear. Here's what I know. You may feel anxious about your kids, but a lot of times your anxiety about your kid may be your anxiety about you. Right? The more anxious we are individually, the more we're going to project that, the more that they're going to feel that, and the more that that's going to impact them. If you can get healthier, the healthier you are, the healthier your kids are likely to be as well. In fact, I couldn't figure out a super pithy way to say this, but this is the best I came up with. We may have to read it a couple times. Here it is. Work out whatever you need to work out now so that your kid doesn't have to work out what you didn't work out later. Are you with me? We all have stuff, guys, all of us. We have things that we need to work out. Of course we do. Of course we do. But the worst thing we can do is to not work that out and then to just keep handing it to our children because they will have to work out later what we do not work out now. And if I can just say, every week we have folks who are here who are followers of Jesus, and we have folks who are thinking about Jesus and considering it, and folks who are invited, and we're excited for every person who's here. So I'm a pastor. Of course you would expect me to say the next thing I'm going to say, but I mean it when I say it. If you've got stuff you need to work out, and we all have stuff you need to work out, I think one of the healthiest things you can do is attach yourself to a church, attach yourself to Jesus, place your fears and anxieties at the cross of Christ, and see how that transforms and changes you over time. It is not the case, and I would never make you the promise, that if you choose to follow after Jesus, then all of your troubles will just go away and you'll be a totally new person the next day. No, there's this process. But here's what I can tell you. If you decide to put your trust in Jesus and you decide to figure out what it looks like to actually reorient your life around his teaching and his way, to call him your Lord, which means he's just the boss of your life, then over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, I promise you'll be a really different person. I do not have it all together. In fact, there will be plenty of examples of me not having that all together as we go through the message today. I don't have it all together, but I'm in a much better place than I was 20 years ago because year after year, month after month, week after week, there's been a work that Jesus is doing inside of me. There's a lot of stuff that if Jesus hadn't worked on me, I would be passing along to my kids. Anger issues, control issues that I've struggled with throughout the course of my adulthood. But I am able to not pass it along, not because, I did so good. I think that I laid those things at the feet of Jesus and he began to make them better. So the healthier you are, the healthier your children are likely to be. Every step you take toward health, by the way, every step, every little sliver of progress is great for you and it's great for your children. So it's not about becoming like a totally healthy person one day. Make incremental steps and watch how it positively impacts your kids. Encouragement number 3, you are always teaching. You are always teaching. If you think oh man, I really want to teach my kids something. What should I teach my kids? I've had people come up to me, right? Like Christians, I want to try to teach them a thing. I really want to teach my kids. And I always say, too late. You're already teaching your kids. Why? Because they're watching all the time, okay? I was making a sandwich or something a few months ago. My 6-year-old William's talking to my wife Emily in the kitchen or the dinette area, and as I'm making a sandwich, and Will just says to my wife Emily, he says, Mom, did you know that Dad sometimes comes to stop signs, but he doesn't stop? And my wife, because she's always got my back, she said, yeah, I actually did know that sometimes your dad doesn't stop at stop signs. And I was like, I stop. And then my 9-year-old walks in, he's like, you slow down sometimes. I'm like, hey, we're ganging up too much, okay? It's not okay. Well, they're always paying attention. They're always watching. They're looking at everything you do. And what you tell them, right, the explicit stuff that you say, they're probably less likely to remember than the stuff that you do. You're always teaching them, always, even if you're not using words. There's this passage in the book of Deuteronomy. It says this, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. This is the Lord speaking. Then he says, these are to be on your hearts, but what are you supposed to do with them? Well, impress them on your children. And the Hebrew word here literally just means to sharpen, like sharpen your children with them. That's what I want you to do. How do you do that? Well, talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up, and tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads and write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. In other words, as you go about your day, as you live your life, live these out. Integrate it into everything. And that's the thing. However we believe the world operates, whatever we think about the world, like we will live our lives in such a way that it's integrated. It will come out of us in all kinds of ways that our kids will see. So the friend a few years ago, a pastor friend of mine named Rob, and he shared 7 questions with me and a group of folks that he was teaching that day on parenting. 7 questions, yes or no questions, and immediately it was like everybody had an answer to all of them about their family growing up, immediately. And it just made me think, like, as we walked through these questions, like, oh my goodness, like you pick up so much stuff that's never said out loud. And so I thought I would share them with you this morning. Again, not my questions, but I think they're really good. So here's 7 questions. Growing up, by the way, these are rhetorical. I don't expect you to stand up and answer, okay? You can just assume. Growing up, did you want the kind of life that your parents had? Did your parents see life as a trial to be endured or an adventure to go on? Did your parents' worldview, faith, religion, or path, did it work for them? Did it bring them joy? Did you want to have a marriage like your parents someday? Number 5, did your parents pursue their dreams or did they settle? Number 6, did your parents wake up each day with a sense of expectation and anticipation of what the day might bring, or did they just get through it? And finally, did your parents work through their wounds and their issues? You probably had a yes or no click into your mind for each of these pretty quickly. Now some of you are sitting there feeling unbelievably grateful because you realize, man, unlike lots of people, my parents actually handed me a really good view of the world growing up. For some of you, these questions brought up all kinds of bad memories. And I'm sorry for that. But what I know is we have the opportunity to pass on a worldview, a set of values, a set of beliefs as well. You do, I do. We have that opportunity. And whether you ever explicitly tell your kids the answer to these questions or not, they will figure them out just by watching you. You are always teaching everything you do. You're teaching them because they are always watching. So what do they see? Well, they see how you deal with conflict. They see how you get angry. They see whether or not you enjoy your life. They see your work ethic. They see what you value. They see whether you're grateful to be alive. They see what you think is important. They see whether you respect your spouse or not, your parents or not, your coworkers or not, politicians or not. They see whether you're the kind of person that gives dignity and honor and respect to every human being, even when they misbehave, even when they do something wrong or horrible, because you believe they are of infinite worth, created in the image of God. Or they see if you are easily dismissive of people, write people off as villains and bad guys, demonize entire groups of people because of what they believe or how they vote or how they think or what team they cheer for. They see all of that. And you don't ever have to say it explicitly. They are always there. They are always learning, and you are always teaching. Okay, One more thing on the teaching thing, and then I'm done. I just think this is important. A little bit of a side note. Don't create unnecessary forbidden fruit for your children. Don't create unnecessary forbidden fruit for your children. Let me explain what I mean by that. The Hebrew Bible, book of Genesis, starts off with a story. God creates the heavens and the earth, the people, land, water, sky, everything. All the stuff gets created. And then people, Adam and Eve, first people, are put in a garden, and God has a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and he says to them, you can eat anything in the gardens, all this stuff, there's tons of it. You do anything you want with it. It's amazing. Play baseball with apples if you want to. Whatever you want to do. There's one tree. Don't eat of this fruit. And they're like, cool, we got it. I don't know, 24 hours passed, something, not a long time. And they're like, you know what I'd really like to try? That one tree. Like, that one tree looks amazing, right? And so what we find out in Genesis is that we have this propensity to run after the forbidden. We have a propensity for that. So here's what you've got to be careful of as a parent. You got to teach your kids right from wrong, no problem there. There's some things in life that you got to teach them about that maybe you've struggled with or that others have that you just stay away from these things. Caution around these things. Here's what you don't want to do. And I've had enough parents tell me this over the years. This is not even something that we've had the opportunity to mess up terribly yet, although we did mess up a little bit. I'll talk about that in a second. But parents who have been really, really strict have often found that their children are more rebellious and more misbehaved in their teen years and in their 20s than parents who are not quite as strict. I know that seems counterintuitive, but that's how it works because you take an issue and you electrify it. You make it way more vibrant than it ought to be necessarily. It may be important, but you neon sign it, right? It's like, meh, 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 like, don't do this and don't do this. And they're like, you know what I'd really like to try? That. So you got to be careful. Don't create unnecessary forbidden fruit for your children. I have two sons. Jack is 9 years old. William is 6. Jack was such an easy baby, such an easy kid. He's been easy the whole time. We used to walk around the mall when he was 2, 3 years old with him, and we'd see other parents yelling at their kids and screaming and shouting and throwing temper tantrums, and we were like, we are such good parents. Our kid doesn't do any of that. Well, we are so amazing. And then God was like, but you're going to have another one. And so we did. And his name is William, and he's an amazing kid, great leadership, and if he finds Jesus, it'll be wonderful for him and for the world. So, and the kid, I sincerely, I love both my children so much. They both make me laugh so much every day. I enjoy them. I truly do enjoy them. Will has always been way harder than Jack has been to raise, though. That's just his personality, right? I think every parent gets that surprise kid where you're like, he's not like you, he's not really like me. I can't crack the code. What do we do with this kid? He had this response. Why would he do that? I don't know. I didn't act like that when I was a kid. I didn't act like that when I was a kid. Okay, I guess we give up. Adoption. It's fine. It's good. So everybody, you have a surprise kid, right? All right, so what you don't want to do, right? You don't want to create unnecessary forbidden fruit for your children. That means when your children tell you do something wrong, you shouldn't lose your mind over it, which is a great rule. Let me tell you about a time we didn't do that well. This is William. He's 6 now, but he was 3 in this picture. He was 3 when what I'm about to tell you about happened. 3 years old. He doesn't have a ton of, he had a lot of words. His sentence structure wasn't great, but he had quite a lot of words. We're sitting at dinner one night, and he's got a little, baby fork, one of those little miniature forks, and he's trying to get a pea or something on the end of the fork, and he can't do it. And he just looks up and he goes, what the F? Yeah, but he said the whole word, okay? And Emily looked at me and she said, by the way, if you're one of those people that's like, I can't go to church, those people have it all together there. We do not, okay? Just, Emily looked at me and she said, did you hear what he said? And I was like, no, that couldn't have been what he said. And so I said, Will, what did you just say? And he said it again. And so I'm torn between the horror of oh my gosh, he shouldn't be saying that. And also he used it properly. I don't, you get it, right? Okay, so I said, but what happened? Well, my internal fear and anxiety took over, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I'm the pastor. He's gonna be walking around church what the what? And then people are gonna be like, and that's the pastor's kid, right? So I freaked out, and I was like, no, we don't say that word. We do not say that word. That word is highly offensive to some people. And he was like, but I can say it at home when no one else is around, right? I was like, no, he's 3. I said, no, you don't say that word anywhere. You don't say it out in public. You don't say it when you're at the house. 3 seconds passed by, and he goes, but I can say it in my room when you can't hear me. And I said, no, I'll hear it then too, which I won't. right? I freaked out about it because I was worried he was going to do it. And what I did was I created a forbidden fruit, a neon sign. I electrified it. I was like, don't do this. And he was like, well, that's exactly what I would like to do then, right? And so what did I do? Well, later I went back to him, and we had this conversation then, ever since then, with both of our children. There are words. Words are not inherently bad in and of themselves, right? They're just words. Words have whatever meaning we give to them. So why are we cautious with what words we use? We're cautious with the words that we use because some people are very offended by some language, and we don't want to be offending people intentionally. Like we want to be kind to others, and we want to be mindful and thoughtful about what they may feel is appropriate. So we ended up circling back, and we ended up correcting it. We basically said, like, look, here's the why behind that. Did he fully get that at 3? No, he didn't fully get that at 3. Does he fully get that at 6? He's getting further along. Like we're making progress, okay? And it's just this way of parenting, right? That instead of flipping our lids and losing our minds and electrifying an issue and creating forbidden fruit on accident, we're saying, like, here's why we don't do that. And we're doing some more teaching and some more instructing, and we're taking our time with it, and we're not freaking out. Don't freak out. I say that as someone who sometimes freaks out. Okay, encouragement, number 4. We're almost done. Keep them talking. Keep them talking. Your children, keep them talking. When they're young, keep them talking. When they're teenagers, keep them talking. When they're young adults, when they're old adults, keep them talking. There's this passage in Ephesians 6:4 where Paul's writing to fathers, but mothers, I assure you, it counts for both of us. And he says this, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. There's a way to raise your children where you exasperate them, you wear them out, you embarrass them, and then you lose influence with them. And when you lose influence with your children, it's difficult to bring them up in the way of the Lord because they don't want to hear what you have to say anymore. Here's a great question to ask your kids sometimes. Now listen, if they're 4 years old, probably a little early. But by the time they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, older, this is a great question to ask. You may have to reword it a little bit depending on their English language comprehension, but here's the question. What am I doing that exasperates you? What am I doing that exasperates you or embarrasses you, right? What are the things that I'm doing as your mom, as your dad, that you wish I wouldn't do or that I'd do differently? And here's the thing. They'll have a list. They'll have things that you're not, and they will tell you that if they trust that you can handle it. If their response to you is that you're not doing anything to exasperate them, that's probably the worst response you could get, because that almost certainly means they don't trust you to handle what it is they have to say. They're afraid that you'll get defensive, or they're afraid that you won't be able to hear it, or they're afraid that nothing will change. So it's a great question to ask your children if you have the guts and the courage to do it. Because what you do in asking them that is you open up a dialogue and you allow them to speak into what's helpful and unhelpful about your relationship. And I know they're kids. And I realize they might say something like, well, our bedtime is 10:30 p.m., but I'd really like to start going to bed at 3 a.m. There's a video game that's very important to me. Like, okay, there's some rules we're not changing, okay? I'm not telling you like you're handing them the keys to the castle and they now get to run the show. I'm saying there are probably some things that you do that exasperate them, and if you knew it, you'd do it differently. And you won't know unless you ask. And it allows them to know that they matter, and their voice matters, and you can hear them. And only ask them this if you can commit to hearing them. Because what this does is it just opens up the dialogue, and it keeps them talking. Hey, one more thing. I know this sounds brutally simple, over the top simple. Ask questions. Never stop asking questions. And when you feel like you're done, ask more questions. I got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. How was your day at school? Is almost always met with, fine. What did you do today? Nothing. Well, that is not true. So let's talk about more, right? What friends did you see today? What topic did you do today? Who did you play with on the playground today? Oh, really? That person asked you if you would be their boyfriend today. Well, I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't pried 15 questions deep. Like, that's the kind of stuff you have to do. You just have to keep asking. And then when you have experiences together, ask them about the experience. You go to see a movie together, ask them, what did you think of the movie? What was your favorite scene? Why did you like that character? What really made you think? Like, you can just keep asking questions, and what you're teaching them along the way is that you matter. Your opinion matters. Your thoughts matter. You have a place in this family. You get a voice here. I care what you think. You just keep asking questions, because it's terrible to get to the age of 12 or 14 or 16 years old and feel like your parents never had time to hear what you thought or what you had to think. And I know some parents might be like, well, Josh, they're just kids. What do they know? Far more than we give them credit for. Far more than we give them credit for. So, yes, here's what, I've learned this with staff as well, just a little side note here. Like, here's what we need. We really need people who are experienced and grizzled, and they've seen some things, and they've got some wisdom. And we also need a bunch of young people who haven't been disappointed, let down, and burned out by the world so much, and they still believe that hope is possible and that things could actually change. We need it both. And so if you shut that voice out of your family, like, you are missing out on an incredible amount of, yes, it's a little bit naive maybe. Also, it might just change things for you. Don't miss out on it. Keep them talking. Keep them talking. Ask questions. Here's what I say. They're going to come, by the way, and tell you things, and your response to what they tell you will dictate whether they continue to tell you things, right? So if they come to you and they say, like, actually, my friend John got busted for pot in the bathroom at school today. And if you're like, what? John had pot? There's drugs in school? Yeah, first of all, yeah, there's drugs in school. Okay, calm down. Secondly, like if you have this big over-the-top reaction, what have you just taught them? Mom and dad can't be trusted with this information. They can't be trusted. So instead, see those moments as precious and sacred because they trusted you with something they didn't have to. And ask them what they think and meet them in the middle. And yes, wisely, you can guide some conversations and have some input. But if they believe that you can be trusted with things, then they will ask you what you think. And then you'll have license to give it to them fully because they've requested it. That's the way that works. Your goal is to be a non-anxious presence with non-judgmental interest. Okay? Now, if you deeply care about the way of Jesus, you're going to have lots of opinions about the way that they would live their life. You should teach them that, of course. You'll teach them more about that through the way you live than what you actually say out loud. Both are important, but when they tell you something that runs counter to your own value system, listen, lean in, ask more questions, and when you think you're done, ask a few more. And then you'll probably get asked for your opinion. You can give it if you're not, but work together, keep them talking, don't freak out. That's the bottom line of this whole sermon. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. Keep the influence with your children. A few weeks ago, I saw this painting. And it's a fascinating painting because it's a painting of the disciples of Jesus, the followers of Jesus, shortly after the Last Supper that they have together in the upper room where they take the Eucharist together. Jesus goes out to pray, and he's about to be arrested, tried, and crucified. He knows that's coming. Now, he's told them all this, but they just basically don't believe it. It's like that thing that we do sometimes when people give us information that we don't want. We just plug our ears, la, 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 like I just want to pretend, right? Or sometimes I'll find an article that confirms my own bias, and then that's like, some kind of scientific, for instance, a few months ago, or a few years ago, the New York Times ran an article that talked about the health benefits of drinking a lot of coffee. And I was like, I'm never reading anything else about health and coffee again. This is what I want to be true, so I will keep drinking coffee, and I will always point to this article, right? And so everything else, like, la, la, la. So Jesus has told them, things are going to go badly, and they just don't fully believe it. They just can't see how that would be possible. So he goes to pray, and he is praying an excruciating prayer. He is sweating blood because he is so anxious about what's about to happen to him. He's about to be arrested, tortured, crucified, and killed. And he tells them, can you please stay awake and keep watch for me and pray? And he leaves and goes to pray. He comes back, they're sleeping. You ever had some wine and then someone's like, hey, can you just sit up by yourself quietly and pray for the next hour or so? That's the situation there. They just keep falling asleep. And so he goes back, and several times they're still asleep, and they fail him in this case, basically. He gets arrested shortly after this. Here's what I found fascinating about this piece of art. The disciples are blowing it here. This is a picture of them not doing what Jesus asked them to do. The artist, because this is the way that this type of art is done, has given them, around their heads, halos. Because in this type of art, you give halos to saints. And yet they are not being saints in this particular picture. The artist is projecting something that hasn't happened yet. Why? Well, see, they're not depicted as saints because of who they were that night. They're depicted as saints because of who they became later. Parenting is hard. And sometimes in the midst of us raising our children, we start to wonder, like, man, is any of this taking hold? Is any of this making a difference at all? Jesus had been walking with these guys for 3 years before this. He had taught them everything. He had brought them into his inner circle. He did life with them. They understood how he woke up, how he prayed, how he ate, how he talked to people. They understood all of that stuff, and it's still, they couldn't stay awake and keep watch and pray for him on the night that he was going to be arrested, tried, and crucified. Is any of this taking hold? Is any of this doing anything? I mean, the church, right, was God's plan A for spreading the gospel, and there is no plan B. These are the guys who are going to do it. It turns out these are the guys who are going to do it. Moms, your work is frustrating sometimes. You love your kids so much. You so want the best for them. And sometimes you see them make bad choice after bad choice. It just breaks your heart. Don't give up on them. They need a few people in their lives who will not give up on them no matter what they do. You're their mom. You're the only one they have. Don't give up on them. Here's what you need to know. The bricks you lay today may become the path your kid walks tomorrow. Keep laying bricks. Keep being faithful. Heavenly Father, thank you for our time together today. God, I pray for the exhausted and the wounded. I pray for the downtrodden, for the despairing this morning. The moms who walked through this door this morning that they wanted to be here. It's Mother's Day. Excited about that, but God, they're worried about one of their kids or all of their kids. Or they're a new mom and they're like overwhelmed with all this newness. So I lift them up to you, God. And I pray for those who are excited and exuberant and have great relationships with their kids. And God, wherever we find ourselves on the pathway of parenthood, of mentorship, of guidance, would you, God, allow us to see Jesus Christ as our inspiration, the one who just wouldn't give up on the disciples and still today does not give up on us. Not because of what we're doing right this moment, but because of who we are and who we were created to be. May we love our kids enough to guide them to who they were created to be as well. It's in Jesus' name I pray.